Welcome back to another live stream. I hope everyone is doing well. Um, let's make sure everything is on correctly. And everything should be on correctly. Yes, and I haven't got the volume down on here. Nice one. The professionalism as always. So, yeah, I hope everyone is doing well. It's nice to see charlatans in the chat already. Mexican Asuka, mostly love of music. Welcome everyone to the stream. So, Antcraft as always. So today is an exciting one. So in this stream, what we're going to be doing is watching I Wish You Were Never Born. Now we'll wait a bit for people to shuffle on through. But so before we start the actual documentary, and I'll get it because some people might not know it's a documentary, although I assume most of you do. But I'll explain it all a bit, give a bit of the background that I'm aware of, and go over some of the articles that were released about it, and then we'll go into the actual documentary just while people are shuffling in. But if you're here already, please say hello in please say hello in the chat. We've also got Syndicate and Void Occupant, as always, absolute legends. So yes, so let's go over a bit about the documentary in general. So a new documentary has just come out like in the last 2 weeks. I think it's been in the last 2 weeks. It's very recently, in the last couple of weeks. And this I might be wrong on, but I've heard others say that this is the first professional grade documentary done on antinatalism. Obviously, there have been previous sort of quasi documentaries or documentaries done in the past on antinatalism, but they either weren't strictly documentaries or they weren't professional grade. So a very recent one that also came out this year that people might remember is Timmy 2 Cents. I think it was an hour and a half long video about antinatalism, which was like professional grade, but I guess it's more technically classed as like a more of a YouTube investigation thing. I don't know if it strictly falls under documentary, but anyway, to be honest, it's probably nitpicking. But anyway, so it could be, it could not be.
We bring children in this world and we raise them to be warriors against evil.
And we have our first donation. Thank you so much to Bovine Blue Stocking. Thank you so much for the support, and I hope you're looking forward to the documentary. Bovine says, "Hey Lawrence, I'm looking forward to this." Okay, so you are looking forward to it, but also wanted to say that your live stream with Tejas a couple of days ago was absolutely fantastic. Happy New Year when it comes, Bovine Blue Stocking. Yes, so if you haven't seen it already, 2 days ago, I think, I did a live stream with Tejas, the Cosmic Antinatalist, who does the amazing Antinatalism This Week series. So he does weekly, basically like news roundup videos about, you know, what has gone on related to antinatalism this week. They're always jam-packed. They are excellent. So go check those out. Go check Tejas out. And I did a live stream with him a couple of days ago, which was basically like a year in review, antinatalism this year. And it was excellent. If I can say so myself. But Bovine says, so there we go. So, okay, where was I? Yes, so anyway, this documentary has come out, and in my opinion, it's not as much in looking into antinatalism, but it's more into looking into antinatalists. So a lot of the focus of the documentary is around antinatalists telling their story about how they came to antinatalism, how it impacts their life, how they exist in the world, all of this sort of stuff. It's less going through the arguments and stuff like that. There is some of that. There is reference to all of that. So if someone watches the documentary as a complete newbie, they're going to get a general feeling for antinatalism. But to me, it seems more like it's an investigation into antinatalists as a community or as a world. or as people. But nonetheless, it's very. I found it like I really enjoyed it, and we can, we can go over stuff when we actually go through the documentary. I will pause it and give my thoughts and stuff like that. If I was doing a documentary on antinatalism, I would do it differently. But I guess that kind of goes without saying. Like, everyone who's going to do a documentary on antinatalism, not saying I am going to do one, but if I were to do one, every single person is going to do it slightly differently. So it kind of goes without saying that I would do things slightly differently. Different people want to do different angles, interested in different things, want to talk about different things within the subject, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Okay, let's say hello to a few more people and then we'll get into a couple of things. And I'm also actually going to put the brightness of my light up a bit. So we've also got... Oh, shit. We've also got Louis. Welcome, Louis. It's Sage... Danny Kunin... Danny Kun... Hopefully people know who I'm talking about. Danukanin. Or I can't say your name. We've got Bovine as always. Dasting. I'm not going to attempt your whole name, sorry. Lora. Imaginary Unit, welcome. Cool. If you haven't said hello already, please do. Right. Let's get into a couple of things before the main thing. So, this is where you can watch the documentary. So this is the website. I mean, you watch it directly on YouTube as well. In fact, it's the YouTube link that is linked there. So this is the website for the documentary, I Wish You Were Never Born. You can watch it on the website, but it's just embedded from YouTube, so you can just watch it on YouTube. At present, last time I checked, it has 42,000 views, which is very good. I think I'm right in saying this. I checked Jack's channel. So Jack Boswell is the creator. So there's Jack there. There's a bit of information about him there. So I checked Jack's channel and it looks like this documentary was the first thing uploaded. I don't know if he'd uploaded things before and taken them down or whatever. But that's excellent. 42,000 views. It was the first thing on his channel as far as I was aware. I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong about that. So it's excellent. It's got so many views. And then there's Bruno, who I believe did all the camera work. But one of the reasons it's been able to get the views it has got is, and hopefully it will continue to get more. It's definitely going to get, it's going to go past 50,000. Hopefully it'll reach 100,000. But yeah, one of the reasons it could get the views it has gotten and hopefully will get is because of some articles that were published about it. So Rolling Stone, obviously very famous magazine, they published an article about it. Some want high birth rates, others would rather see humans go extinct, by Miles Klee. And basically, it's behind a paywall, so, get access to it if you can, etc. But basically, this article, and then there's also a Vice article. You can't quite see the logo of Vice there. There you go at the top. Antinatalists wish that no new person is ever born. And then there's yours truly looking like a mug. And this one isn't behind a paywall, so you can read this one all the way through. But basically, both articles are sort of going over what is the documentary, a bit of an intro into who antinatalists are. And then just recommended to go watch it. They both, speak in relatively positive terms, which is very good. It's not specifically them speaking in positive terms about antinatalism, but about the documentary. The one interesting thing is as well is I would say I read both of them when they first came out, so I'm a bit hazy, but I remember the Vice article being more interesting because it actually has an interview with Jack, the director. So yeah, it's more interesting. Cool. I think that is about it. yeah, I will say hello to a few more people who have come into the chat, and then we can get cracking. So welcome Coril, Prasad, Matthias. I've said hello to Charlatan. Ryan Partridge, and Vapor. Cool. Okay, I think we can get into it. Is there anything else I need to go over? I don't think so. Um, I've given my general like
We bring
overview.
children in
Oh,
this world and
we
we raise them to be
warriors
warriors against
evil.
evil.
Thank you so much for the support, for the donation. There is no message attached to this one, so clearly the person is just letting me know they're a legend because I know who sent it in, but they didn't want to leave a message. But thank you so much. You know who you are. Thank you for the support, and I hope you're going to enjoy watching the documentary as a little community here. But thank you so much for that. Oh yeah, one. Okay, yeah. I forgot. Okay, so I can give a bit of background, which I don't think Jack would mind me sharing at all. I keep it very pretty vague. So I Jack. I can't actually remember how we first got in contact. But anyway, so Jack obviously let me know in some way that he was working on a documentary about antinatalism, and I believe at the point in which I started talking to him, and I'm sure all the other people in the documentary have they have their own stories about this and stuff. So he at the point that I got in contact with him, I don't think much had really happened. I think he had done one bit of filming, or he was just about to do one bit of filming with Danny Shine. So the first bits of filming he did were with me and Danny Shine, separately. Although he did film me and Danny together at one point, not together in shot, but we were both there on location at the same time, which was at Speaker's Corner, because he came and did some filming of a bunch of us who were doing antinatalist outreach at Speaker's Corner in London, which you see a bit of, not much, but a bit of footage of in the documentary. And then there was also some filming done in a group setting in a park in London by a tree. I'm just trying to think, was it Russell Square? It might have been Russell Square, but I can't remember. But anyway, it was with a couple of the members from the UK antinatalist community, or because they weren't all London based, so it was the UK antinatalist scene, because we have a little community, and we did some filming. So there's a tiny clip of that in it as well. But yeah, when I first met Jack, we just had a walk around London together chatting, and he, like, when if for other videos people have reached out to me for, or news articles and stuff, or interviews or whatever, often if they want to do a pre-conversation to the conversation, usually that is a more in-depth philosophy discussion, because they want to understand antinatalism in more depth than they're going to present it in, because they want to understand it in a sufficient amount of depth, even though they're not going to become an expert, but they want to understand it in a sufficient amount of depth so that they can understand or make an assessment themselves what's important to focus on. It helps them to make a narrative, because if you don't understand something that well, you're not going to understand how to construct a narrative around it, for it to be engaging, for it to convey, what is worth conveying in a meaningful way, all of this sort of stuff. So we had a conversation like that. We also, I gave some ideas on, how I would approach a documentary and stuff. And, maybe he took some of that, maybe he left some of that. I actually can't remember what I told him, so I have no idea if he took any of my advice or not. Yeah, and then, we just had a general conversation like that. And then I met him a second time, which was when we did the actual video interview that I did, where we went to Camden and Primrose Hill. So the shot where I'm on a bench, which we'll obviously see, that was in Camden on the lock there. Well, no, not on the lock, but along the canals. And then we went up to Primrose Hill, which is when we're looking over the skyline. But we'll see that. I think that is all the sort of background I sort of have to give to people. So I think we can get into it. I've seen Heartborn's in the chat as well. Thank you for joining, Heartborn. Good to see you here. Daniel Barber as well. Welcome, Daniel. I think we can get into it. So this is the very start. This is Jack, and this is Doug Stanhope, who is a famous American comedian. He also retweeted, or whatever it is now on X, reposted or whatever, shared the documentary on his X account, which has like over 300,000 followers, which is very cool. So another reason why it's been able to get the views it has. But yeah, let's go. I have boosted the volume. So hopefully it's all good. So let's go.
Neighbors. No kids, no kids, no kids, no kids, kids, no kids, adult kid that should have been aborted. Yeah, pretty much no kids.
I had fallen deep down a rabbit hole, researching the philosophy of antinatalism, the belief that having children...
Also, this is completely irrelevant, but this piece of music, it's called, what is it, King of the Mountain Hall or something like that. Such a good piece of music.
...is morally wrong.
When you bring somebody into the world, you are gambling with their life.
That was Les Knight there, absolute legend. So this, like I said, very limited footage of when he came and filmed with us at Speaker's Corner, but this is part of it. This is part of the... And you can see how long ago this was, because look at the microphone I was using. So you can see here. So this is my camera that I use. And the microphone that I was using originally was a wired, for like outside conversations, was a wired one. So you would have me plugged onto the microphone or holding it, but then it was wired to the camera. So the camera person, whoever it was on the day, and sometimes it was me holding the camera, was like stood away, and there was a cable between us in a very busy area. So people would try and like walk between, and yeah, it would just very, very bad setup. But yeah,
you're putting all that risk on them of cancer, dementia, you know, all the horrible things we see.
That's actually wrong.
You have a big grin on your face.
Well, I mean, it's just so fundamentally true, and I think a lot of people don't understand that.
There's Danny. So when I was saying we were filmed together and one day, this is on the same day.
There's no reason for you to reproduce.
I'm not convinced by it.
I'm not convinced by it, no, and I don't think any sort of convincing is ever going to undo the biology.
So you can see here a few of the members of the UK/London antinatalist scene. So I won't say their name in case they don't want me to, but this guy you can see on screen now, I won't say his name, but he's an absolute legend, really nice guy. So yeah, I don't know if he will see this, but top guy.
Imperative to have children.
And yet, this fringe belief continues.
So that was actually one thing I forgot, and I was wondering. There's this video of him meeting someone here, and I actually don't think this makes it into the rest of the documentary, because I don't remember there being an interview on a bench like that with a woman. And I actually don't know who that was. Does anyone know who that is? Unless I'm being an absolute idiot and I should know who that is. I don't know who that is, and I don't know what background is that. Is that Manhattan? Or am I being really ignorant? Yeah, I'm probably showing myself off to be a bit of a div now, but yeah, if anyone knows where that is or who that is.
Continues to attract new followers.
A 27-year-old man in India is suing his parents for giving birth to him without his consent.
Bit of a revelation.
So this is the footage from us filming in what I remember to be Russell Square, but it might not be Russell Square. So you got me, and then the same guy that I was saying was a legend obviously still a legend. And then you've got another member of the group here who, again, I won't say their name just in case.
Really, to actually find that there are people that think alike.
And then, so Jack is here. You've got another member here who, again, legend, but won't say their name.
On the same lines.
Taken to its logical conclusion, the implications of antinatalism are hard to stomach.
The name, voluntary human extinction, pretty much sums it up.
Extinction is a word he uses.
So I want everyone to die, otherwise you just carry on and on and on and on forever.
And I'm like, well, buddy, you can start with yourself.
I've set out to understand what draws people to antinatalism.
Oh, sorry. That was...
And I'm like, well, buddy, you can start with yourself.
Then we've got Amanda there in Chicago. Yeah, obviously Amanda features heavily in the documentary, so we'll definitely see more of her.
I've set out to understand what draws people to antinatalism.
The end of suffering forever, that's a really tough thing to say no to.
What kind of toll does it take on their lives?
I think a lot of people would assume that antinatalists would resent their parents.
Yeah, they wronged me. But
I mean, that's life. Life sucks.
By bringing me here.
And how does it relate to wider issues?
Full reproductive freedom doesn't exist anywhere.
And I've got to say, this is a really nice shirt that Les has on. I wish I had that shirt.
Is antinatalism simply a crisis of mental health?
Suicide is very brave.
I'm so happy that my friends are free.
Or do they have a point?
Existence is the problem. The solution is never existence.
Do you wish I hadn't been born?
Most people underestimate the amount of bad in their lives.
I think it would have been better for the world and for you not to have been born.
There is no purpose. You're just trapped in a prison. Not my words. They belong to the Antinatalist Reddit group, which boasts over 200,000 members. Scrolling through it is enough to drive you to drink. The only question is if the glass is half full or half empty. No
It's a nice joke worked in there.
prizes for guessing which an antinatalist would choose.
And you can hear in Jack's voice he was proud of that joke.
Think about all of your poor unborn children who have no...
So I feel like I don't need to make this introduction, but I will just in case there's someone who doesn't know who Danny is. But so this, who, you know, we can see his back here, but we've seen his face already in the documentary. So this is Danny Shine. So for those who don't know, basically, so he's perhaps one of the best known antinatalists, sort of, you know, antinatalists generally, and antinatalist activist, however you want to label him. And he's well known for a couple of reasons. One is he goes around and does what he calls like street performances or street interactions, and basically he just goes around on a microphone and questions people on things. And one of the things he questions people on is antinatalism, the ethics of reproduction, stuff like that. You know, often as well, like, you know, existential nihilism. You know, what are we doing here? What is the point of the existence? This is all crazy. But he's also well known for being an antinatalist that has 3 children. So they do get into that a bit in the documentary. So we'll leave that for then. But just giving people an introduction.
No problems right now, but if you create them, they're going to have a whole lot of problems just created just by that one moment of, you know, a nice feeling and a rub-a-dub-dub.
I was outside King's Cross Station in London, watching Danny Shine interact with the public.
This is what I'm saying, we're all deluded, and people like that are having children, can you imagine? Which is why I always carry some spare condoms to anybody who has half a chance this evening of making...
I think that actually is somewhat common, that people who go out and do antinatalist activism, I've actually never done this, but people who go out and do antinatalist activism carry condoms with them and give them out. As I think it's a bit of like a gimmick, you know, but that will also be positive. Yeah.
King some poor woman pregnant.
And on one of his breaks, I found myself on the receiving end of a diatribe.
There's no reason to do it. Think about why you do want to. Why? Why do you want to? What? You want to be like the master of somebody else's life? You want to tell them what to do? You want to guide them? You want them to look up to you? Do you want that? Well, fuck for. You got your own little fucking life to take care of and all your own bullshit and demons and all this shit that we've all got, yeah? So why would you do that? Why would you even want to? You can parrot any old stupid shitty line, but if your child is asking you why did you have me when they're in crisis, you need to tell them the truth. Why?
It's very true. Like, you know, there will be many people out there that aren't even aware of their own motivations for having a child beyond the recognition that they wanted one. Just like, why do you want one? Is it to feel normal in society? Is it because you feel lonely? You don't feel complete in some way? Which are all things to be sympathetic with someone for. Like, we all want to feel like we fit in some way. Even if it's not in society at large, we want to fit in with some group. No one really truly wants to be alone. They want to have some connection and feel connected to people. You know, no one wants to feel lonely. No one wants to feel incomplete. So these are all understandable things. It doesn't mean that you can just go around and create people to fix your own problems, obviously. But yeah, we really need that. To be honest, using the term mandatory, I don't mean like this should be state enforced or anything, but I just wish it had to happen that people had to deeply reflect on their motivations for having a child, because I think that would lead more people than it would otherwise if they didn't to not reproduce. Yeah, and it's just you know, the lack of reflection on this topic seems yeah, it's very worrying. And you know, if people reflected on it more and how serious it was, they would probably also act more responsibly in terms of responsibly sexually, because half of pregnancies, I mean, this statistic was from 2 coming up to 3 years ago now, but it's probably still somewhat the same. Like 50% of pregnancies unintended around the world. That's crazy. This is clearly not showing a group of people, i.e. humanity, that take this issue as seriously as it should be taken. Otherwise the rate would be much, much smaller. And I think if people actually deeply reflected on their own motivations for having a child, even though all of those pregnancies won't come from, because they're unintended, so presumably they weren't actually trying to have a child then. But if you reflect on your motivations for having a child, whether you want to have a child, what are the sort of forces at play that are maybe nudging you towards doing that, like cultural, family, this sort of stuff. If people are much more aware of that or cognizant of that, they're probably going to act more. They're probably going to act more responsibly when it comes to sex, in terms of contraception and stuff like that. Sorry for my bodily processes there. Cool. Let's continue with Danny.
Why would you?
I was struggling to figure out how much of this Danny really believes and how much is a provocative form of street theatre. So I arranged to meet up with Lawrence Anton, an antinatalist who...
I actually forgot I was in it this early. I mean, this is the only part that I am in. So this is where we met in Camden, going down the what's it called, canal. Yeah.
Whose actions speak louder than words.
Can we talk about your...
And I feel I'm probably being too self-critical because I did this with the other interview as well. But I do feel like I come off as a bit awkward in this. But, you know, what can you do? And let me just go back because we're going to miss a funny line from Jack.
Louder than words.
Can we talk about your scrotum?
Yeah. I don't get asked that by a man every Tuesday evening.
You have had a vasectomy.
Yeah.
So I can't remember how long we spoke for, but at this location it was probably like 15, 20 minutes. I can't really remember. And then we went to Primrose Hill and did some more. And only a very short bit is taken about vasectomy. But we did like a wider interview, and obviously, Jack includes what he wants to include. That's obvious. But we covered, antinatalism generally. I think we talked about family a bit, all of that sort of stuff. But I understand that you're not going to meet many young men who have had a vasectomy this early. So I actually don't know how old I was here, because I think this... Well, no, was this last summer? Yeah, I think this was filmed last summer. So I would have been 26 and I had my vasectomy at 23. So I'd had it for 3 years at that point. So yeah, I think this is why he wanted to, because at some point in the documentary, I can understand if he's looking at antinatalists, he's thinking, okay, well, I want to show how they're putting this into practice in their own lives, what it's making them commit to, and this is an example of that. And it provides extra sort of, not shock value, but like impact if the subject you're talking to about it is young. If you're talking to Danny Shine, I don't know which way, if he's had a vasectomy or not, but let's say Danny has had a vasectomy in theory, I don't know. But if he has had a vasectomy, that's not going to surprise people, because he's older than me and he's already got 3 children. I'm in a very different circumstance. So I think that was probably why that bit of the interview that I did with Jack was used for the documentary. But let's get into it.
How old were you when you had it?
23, I think. The way I saw it was that if I did change my mind after having a vasectomy, I've only screwed over myself. But if I don't get a vasectomy and an accident happens, I've screwed over someone else in terms of like creating them. And also, if I did have a vasectomy and lived to regret it, and I wanted to have a child, I could adopt, right? And that's not a bad thing.
I suppose what I'm curious is, when you're going through a really euphoric moment in your life, something really joyous, do you ever doubt?
This, obviously, Jack is asking different questions because he wants to get footage for the documentary. But so I'm not making a comment on the fact that Jack is asking this question, but people have asked me this question before, like Speaker's Corner or other places, about, do you never like reconsider when you're in a time in life when you're just, you're having an amazing time? And there's kind of 2 questions here, right? Does it not make you like evaluate existence as positive or be glad that you're born? And then the other thing is, does it not make you reevaluate? And I guess they're linked, obviously. But the other thing is, does it make you reevaluate whether you think procreation is unethical or not, or it's not, morally right to create, new life? And I've just seen Charlatan in the chat, Lawrence Schlong talk. Let's not make that a series of videos. No one wants that. But yeah, it's just like, one, I don't think we should be changing our... I don't think you should necessarily be swayed in what you think is morally right or wrong because of temporary, intense emotional states. That's the first thing, whether they're positive or negative. Obviously, they can go on to inform certain views you have, like the fact that we are capable of extreme temporary negative emotional states is definitely a consideration in the ethics of procreation, for me. But experiencing one yourself shouldn't, in general, you should not be basing your moral evaluations of things solely on temporary emotional states that you have personally been in. Again, they can be used to inform, but they shouldn't be the foundation in my eyes. So that's one thing. The second thing is, about viewing life as positive or something like this. If you're experiencing like a really good, positive mental state and saying, isn't this a reason, to like, it's a positive thing, we should be creating more of this, more people to experience these things. There's a meme somewhere. Well, it's not a meme, actually, it was a tweet, and I've seen it used elsewhere by like philosophical pessimists generally. But it's kind of like the idea of like, if you asked a drug addict whilst they're on drugs, like someone who is, addicted to drugs, and whilst they're on the drug and having that euphoric experience, this may not be the case for all people in all instances, but if you ask them, is this a really good experience? Do you like this? Would you like to continue this? Is this something other people should experience? They may like very well say yes, but that doesn't mean that it's a particularly informed reason for saying yes. And again, not everyone will say yes. Just like myself, if you experience like intense pleasurable states temporarily, that's not going to lead you to then change your position on antinatalism. Like, you'll still say, okay, like, this was a good experience, but it doesn't mean we should create people, or that it's morally okay to create other people, or that it was a positive thing that I was created, and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, I just find this this question. Obviously, I'm not knocking Jack for asking it, because he's asking all the questions for the documentary, but it's just very bizarre that people ask this question. Because I don't know, if someone came to me and they were an antinatalist, or there was some other view, and they said, I had this amazing time at this wedding or birthday party, or I had really good sex one time, or something like that, and it changed them, and it that led them to change a core ethical belief they have, I'd look at them like, what? You obviously haven't thought through your ethical beliefs that well if a short, emotional, intense feeling changed it. But anyway, let's continue.
Your convictions?
Well, in the most euphoric times, I'm probably not thinking about antinatalism, because I'm like so in the moment with whatever's going on. But if someone was to like drag me out of it for a split second and say, think about the moment you're in now, it's amazing to have those euphoric moments, but if I was never born, I wouldn't exist to be deprived of them.
I'll just say hello to a few people. There's Apollonius. I probably said your name wrong. Apologies, but welcome to the chat, Riul. But nevertheless, Tekken. John H. Bert van der Bosch. Van Gogh. Rune Skitzing. Sunita. Terry Grigg. Welcome to the chat, Terry. Hopefully I haven't missed anyone.
We walked up Primrose Hill to gaze out over the city beneath us. And I couldn't help but ask if Lawrence was really okay with all those millions of people eventually disappearing if antinatalists were to get their way.
I do understand the sentimentality of why...
Oh, mate, I need to lose weight. Look at that stomach.
People find that sad, but once it's happened, there will be no one around to be sad about it, And I don't think
Welcome to the chat, Manira.
Sentimentality is a good enough reason to impose suffering and death on millions and millions of people in new generations.
It seemed as though...
I don't know if anyone noticed. I'm donning the barefoot shoes. I don't know if does anyone watching, does anyone wear barefoot shoes? Maybe you don't know what barefoot shoes are. Yeah.
Every answer begged another question, which was how I found myself traveling across the pond for 2 weeks of intense filming with antinatalists in the US. First up was Chicago, home to Amanda Sukanek, an artist, podcaster, and antinatalist archivist who's a prominent figure in the community. I arranged to meet Amanda at the apartment she'd grown up in.
Hello.
Hey, Amanda. Hi. How you doing?
Not too bad. How are you? Welcome.
Good.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Bruno. You know, I had inklings of something like antinatalism in very early childhood. Like,
let's see if we can see any of the books on. So there's the podcast logo. That's Antinatal News. There's a Vehement t-shirt there. Does anyone recognize? I think that might be a new approach to reproductive ethics. I don't actually recognize that many by the spines, which is probably not a good thing. I think that might be Karima Kermer's Antinatalist Handbook. Yeah.
I can kind of show one example here. So one of my childhood heroes was the Phantom of the Opera, you know, and there's a lot of birth lamentation, and you know the first line in this children's adaptation is, "I curse the day I was born." And I'm like, there might be something to that. I'll put that on the back burner and think about that later. Sorry, you were going to ask something.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, do you curse the day you were born?
I mean, it's a kind of a yes or no answer. You know, I curse.
The thing I always say about this is, like, intellectually, yes, I recognize it would have been better not to be created, but emotionally, no, I recognize I'm here now, I accept that, and, you know, we move on. That it would benefit no one for me to constantly lament my own birth. It wouldn't benefit me, it wouldn't benefit others, I would be annoying to hang around, all these sorts of stuff. So it's kind of like, you just kind of got to strap on and get going once you're here, you know. Though maybe that's not the best phrase to use, strap on and get going. Yeah, it's just, you know, once you're here, you just kind of got to suck it up and try and have a good time, try and benefit others. Yeah, that's my opinion.
The fact that,
and I recognize it's easier said than done.
World, and we raise them to be warriors against evil.
Thank you so much for the support and the donation. I won't say who it's from because they haven't included that in the message themselves. But thank you so much for the support. You know who you are. And they say, Lawrence, are you going to make a video on your meta-ethical view and maybe normative ethics, or do you want to keep that personal to appeal to a wider audience with different views? I've never planned to make a video about that. I don't know if it would be... I don't know how useful it would be. And also, I honestly haven't gotten to the point where I would be able to make a whole video about it and feel like it was worthwhile making. There's still enough uncertainty for me to like change my mind on things, and I feel like if I made a video then on that, then it may become like outdated very quickly, because I recognize that. Well, it depends what you mean. So yeah, the thing is without getting... What I would say is if anyone wants to know any specific things that I believe, then they can just email me. But I don't plan to make a specific video about it. I don't know if this particularly answers your question, but what I can say is that I don't believe in like objective morality, in that there, you know, are objective ethics or objective morals or ethics, however you want to refer to it, that we can appeal to. As far as I can understand, I'm fairly similar to Alex O'Connor on this, in that as far as I can tell, I'm not saying I like this, I'm not saying this is how I would want the world to be, etc., etc., but this is just this seems to be the most accurate description, is that people's ethical beliefs, including my own, are essentially just emotional reactions to things. And when we say we believe something is morally wrong, we're just saying we don't like that, we want that to stop. So if that answers your question, then there you go. If you want to ask me further questions, then please email me or anything like that. Yeah. But then I obviously recognize that like people's personal moral beliefs or ethical beliefs can follow certain like rules or trends. I completely understand that. Like someone's moral beliefs may fit more in line with utilitarianism or deontology or threshold deontology, whatever. If I was going to say that my general moral views are going to fit with one, it would probably be pluralist. It would probably be like a threshold deontology type view. But honestly, it's a topic where, I'm still like relatively, well, I don't want to say relatively uncertain as in like I'll just blow around in the wind, but I'm still open to being like, well, I'm open to anything being changed, so I don't really know what I'm saying here, but I'm open to being changed like on anything. But yeah, I would say generally like threshold deontology and, there not being objective morals out there, this kind of generally sums up how I view things. But thank you for the question, and as always, if you want to know anything else, then by all means email me or send in another question like you did, or however it's but thank you for the support.
Risks were taken with my sentient welfare. I curse the fact that I'm going to die one day, and that I have no guarantee that that's going to be some sort of, wistful, calm, peaceful transition from being alive to not being alive. There's a lot of regrets that I have about choices that were made against my, without consulting me. It was impossible to consult me, but I regret that I could not be consulted. That's not to say that there aren't a lot of things in my life that I love. I think this room sort of is a chapel to the things in my life that I love. I think I'm more scaling towards, I do wish that I had never been born. I think that procreation is an egregious act of violence, basically. And so I definitely do. Yeah. Sorry. Blah, 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 blah.
No.
But,
because some people might say making a choice for someone else to bring them into the world, but you're also giving them all of these benefits and nice things.
Yeah.
How do you hold that view against antinatalism?
The idea that there's all this control over the kind of life that you can, there's no guarantees. There's absolutely no guarantee that you're going to be able to provide the beings that you create with any of these joys.
Yeah, and they also they don't exist to want any of those things anyway. So it's like you're creating someone to need those things, then providing them with those things and painting yourself out to be this knight in shining armor, when it's like, if you create the need in someone to need food, for example, and then provide them with food, you haven't done a good thing. You've just helped alleviate the burdens that you've put on someone.
Ways or any of these satisfactions, but what you can guarantee is that you're creating a being that will die, and that will inevitably experience suffering. You want to sit on the couch?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
What drew me to antinatalism as a subject matter wasn't so much the philosophy as understanding how it plays.
The dog is so suspicious.
Out in the lives of those who follow it. So I put a question to Amanda which had been on my mind most of the morning.
It's so unpalatable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Does it affect relationships or dynamics with people?
I bet the dog's like, who the fuck are these people in my house?
So I think that this gets into something where, this is one of the reasons why antinatalist activism has such a difficult time. Because to espouse these views, to put these kinds of views forward as a part of your identity has a cost to it. It has a social cost to it. There's no question about that. And I think that I am in a kind of in a unique situation where, like, I'm somebody who's not had to pay social costs for being the way that I am. And
Yeah, I mean, one of the social costs is that it can drive a wedge between you and some of the people you want to be closer to, but they may choose to have biological children, and it's just something that, you're going to find hard to bond with them around or follow them through. Because when people have children, it can often be often by default, it just that becomes their whole life. That is everything they talk about, they do, etc., etc. And I haven't had this personally, but I've spoken to people who have, not necessarily around antinatalism, but just if someone doesn't have a child, but then their friends do have children, they can often drift apart just because of that. And these person aren't necessarily antinatalists, they're just child free. But having a child practically changes your life, or can change your life, or often does so much that it can lead you to drift away naturally from friends that you would otherwise be bonded with still to the same level. And antinatalism is the same, and can even magnify that or exaggerate that because you've got that underlying ethical view as well. But it's not just antinatalists that will happen to. Obviously, people can drift away from each other for all sorts of things. Around children, it can also happen if someone's just child-free. But yeah, so that's an example of one of the sort of real social costs that can happen. But it can also be that it will bring people closer as well. You'll find other friends, or there may be existing friends you have that you introduce to this, or they're introduced another way, and that brings you closer together. That's probably less likely than the earlier example. But, there are swings and roundabouts.
And I know people will hear that and think I'm trying to tell some sort of sob story. It's fine. I have no problem with it. But I've always been genderqueer. I've always been overweight. I've always been, an unusual individual for somebody born female. And so I'm used to sort of paying those kinds of social costs. Like, in some ways, I'm sort of an ideal person to espouse these views, because the idea that it's going to cost me more of that kind of means nothing to me. It means a lot to a lot of other people, though. And I think that that's primarily the reason why so much antinatalism is behind closed doors, which is another reason why I think it's so important that those that do feel comfortable about it do it. Have more of a responsibility to do it. So yeah, I'm proud. I'm proud and pleased to be somebody that can, and I feel like I have a responsibility to.
Antinatalism is a philosophy which has grown.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, many of us might feel like, especially if we're able to, many of us might feel like we have a responsibility to promote antinatalism, or do positive things in the world that align with antinatalism, or just do good in the world generally. Maybe it's not to do with antinatalism, it's to do with something else. And I do feel like we all have some level of responsibility. If we have the capacity to do something, given the state of the world, we should all be doing something. And don't feel like that has to be something like I do, or like Amanda does, or like people who Stop Having Kids do out on the streets. Like, you don't necessarily have to put your face out there or even talk about antinatalism to do positive things in the world that align with antinatalism. So I know some people probably cringe at the amount I talk about this, but one very basic thing you can do is just donate to charities that align with antinatalism. So, like, I don't know if anyone who is currently watching saw, but on Christmas Eve, I made a post about how I will, if you donate to Family Empowerment Media or MSI Reproductive Choices, up to £100, I will double the donation. And some people did donate. I doubled that donation. And that was, some good that antinatalists are doing in the world that isn't, antinatalism is never even mentioned. It's just a donation to a charity. They have their own systems and networks set up. They're doing good in their own ways. antinatalism is irrelevant there, but the good that's being done is in accordance with antinatalism, because that money is going to a charity that does provide abortions or prevent pregnancies from happening in the first place. And it's an evidence-backed charity that really looks at, you know, the data behind what they're doing. And they've, you know, where did I link this previously? I posted it somewhere. Did I post it on my channel? I can't remember. But let me check if I did post it on my channel. But anyway, maybe I didn't post it on my actual channel. But I don't, fair enough. I didn't actually post this on my actual channel. I forgot. So on the Effective Altruism forum, there is a woman whose name I'm actually forgetting right now, but she wrote an introduction to, just type in EA forum MSI reproductive choices, and it's written by a woman, so it'll be a woman's name. I forget her name now. And she basically writes an introduction to MSI reproductive choices, and, you know, how they measure the effectiveness of what they're doing and blah, blah, blah. And it's very interesting. They even have stuff on their website about a calculator and all this sort of stuff. So it's like, that's just one example. You could also do anonymous social media accounts, all sorts of stuff to do positive things in the world in accordance with antinatalism, and not put your, you know, social cost, not have any social cost on the line or anything like that. So yeah, if you feel like you have some sort of responsibility to do something, don't feel like you need to hold yourself back because you don't want to put your name out there or your face out there. You don't need to do that to be able to have an impact.
Slowly and steadily as it spread through the corners of the internet, until 2019, when it exploded briefly into the mainstream.
A 27-year-old man in India is suing his parents for giving birth to him without his consent.
The lawsuit didn't go ahead, but the flurry of news stories around it exposed many more people to the belief. Overnight, the Reddit group was flooded with new members, and with that influx came misconceptions. I wanted to meet one of the people policing the discourse online, so I traveled down to San Antonio, Texas to meet an administrator of the largest antinatalist Facebook group, Kirk Waller.
I do it usually right here.
Oh, really? Okay.
Let me go. Hun, would you bring that computer in for me?
I sat down with Kirk to talk about how he views his role in the community.
They needed to clean it up, step it up. And that's really what I was brought on for, because...
Yeah, so my understanding, so this is the first time I've ever seen Kirk on anything. But so my understanding is that he and maybe some others, I'm not entirely sure, came in and really cleaned up the main English language Facebook group for antinatalism, because apparently it was a real like cesspit before, and it got really cleaned up after him and a couple of other people came in. There have been some things done since then which I don't react positively towards. There's certain forms of censorship. I have been banned from there. I think unjustifiably so, but whatever. You know, many people have been banned from there for trying to have legitimate conversations within antinatalism. But apparently there was good work done earlier in the Facebook group. But yeah, I don't know what goes on that Facebook group anymore. I don't know how active it is or how good a group it is. I can't get in there anymore. It's I'm banned. But yeah, let's see how Kirk is in the doc.
They were just having trouble keeping all the conversations from deteriorating.
So what kind of stuff were you looking at when you took it on?
Well, you know, I think people conflate antinatalism with baby hate or violence, and
which is true.
Those things, and it's basically the opposite of all that.
What is the most troubling kind of thing you've had to take down?
Well, violence, people that don't understand the voluntary nature of it. So in other words, we should impose sterilization, or certain people deserve to reproduce is another problem. It's not a eugenics program. It's existence is the problem. the solution is never existence. And I've had this state of mind since I was 4 years old. So 60 years?
That seems very young. I mean,
there's a word for that. I don't remember what it is.
I don't. When I was 4, I don't think I could even.
My mother was pregnant with number 3, and so then it seemed more obvious. And she didn't try and hide the fact. So then I thought, well, all this misery comes, but I just thought.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how different people come to antinatalism differently. You know, like we've got someone here who it just sort of naturally arose in their mind around 4 years old. Which does seem very unlikely, but, you know, take him at his word, whatever. You know, also, like, Amanda, like, she was saying she was reading, what's the name of it? The Phantom of the Opera, when she was younger. I was older when I came across it. I was 20. And it wasn't something that sort of naturally came up in me. It was something that I had to hear about and hear the arguments for. Then you've got people even later, people like Danny Shine, who came across it, you know, when they were, well, I don't know how old Danny was, but he was older than I was at 20. I think he only learnt about it like, you know, several years ago. Yeah, it's just interesting to hear how like different people come across this idea, and it's very natural to some, and to others it's not natural to, but they have to kind of be convinced into it. Yeah.
No one had a choice. I thought we were the unlucky winners of life, and everyone here was going to cooperate and try and do the best they could to get through it. And then when I just ask her, you know, does this just happen to you? Do you just get pregnant? And she said, no, it's a decision your father and I made. And that was it. That's all I needed to know is like, you chose to put me at risk without my consent, and now I have to go through life and deal with all the stress and stress. And I had no needs or desires prior to my existence, so this is strictly because you wanted something.
Did you have a happy childhood when you were 4 years old?
I think my parents tried to do what they could. I would say we were lower middle class. I did spend a lot of time on my grandfather's farm. Physical punishment was real. And even to the point, if you ever think of further back, that was the edge that I caught, was you had to go like pick your own switch. So there you've got a psychological dilemma, because you've got to go grab one that's big enough to satisfy your father.
This is to hit you.
Right, for punishment. If you got one too small, well, then he would pick one. So you said, I need to pick one that's as small as I can get away with. So even there is sort of a psychological trauma. I mean, you're choosing your own punishment. It's like, do you want to be hung or shot, right?
I suppose what I'm getting at is if you had a different childhood, whether you would have thought at 4 years old, maybe I haven't been burdened with consciousness.
No, because it wasn't just me. It was the whole concept of putting someone at risk for, not on their part, but for your own reason, and with no remedy. And that's how I see it. This is a rifle. You can hold it very well.
That's the rifle.
As well as being the sheriff of Facebook, Kirk is a keen shooter.
This is a leather. You can put it on the table in the middle room there.
Okay.
Over that way. This is my home defense gun.
That's your home defense gun.
And, you know.
I understand like different cultures and stuff, but like this stuff, as like an English person, this stuff comes across as so bizarre. Yeah. Just the fact that someone would have enough guns to have to label one the home defense one and then other ones, and you know, this is just so not in British culture.
Yeah, there you are, right?
He offered to take me shooting and even changed into his authentic Western outfit.
I feel kind of underdressed now.
And the next thing I knew, I was loading up my rented pickup with guns.
I hope you don't mind me bringing it up, but when we spoke on Zoom before, you said that your parents really didn't understand your beliefs, and it had caused some distance between you.
Yes, of course. I mean, parents don't want to be wrong, and they don't want to feel like they're not appreciated for bringing you into this place. But they're fairly well entrenched, and I don't really try and change their mind. I mean, that's somewhat pointless.
Yeah, I feel like, especially with parents, introduce the idea to them if you want to, see where it goes. Depends on your relationship you have with them. And I mean, is it even worth me giving advice, because everyone's situation is so different? But like, the only thing I would say is like, yeah, if it's starting to cause friction, I would just leave it. There's no point trying to convince them. Like, if they're your parents and you're old enough to be talking to them about these sorts of things and watching this live stream to hear me talk about this, then you're probably old enough that your parents are old enough that they're not going to have more children and procreate. So you just don't have to focus on trying to change their mind. Like, if you're going to try and change someone's mind and influence someone, it should be people who haven't chosen to procreate yet, or could choose to further procreate. But like, the chances are, if you're old enough to be thinking in a deep way about antinatalism, watching this to hear me give this advice, then your parents are probably going to be old enough that they're not going to procreate anymore. I might be wrong. If there's anyone watching this, because there's 71 people watching at the moment, and if you haven't already, please like the stream. But if there's anyone watching this whose parents you think your parents could still procreate, please comment in the chat. Let me know, and like, if you are comfortable with, share. How does that make you feel? How do you approach that? Do you want to talk to your parents about it? That sort of stuff. That would be quite interesting to hear. Cool. Okay, nice. Another thing I'm actually going to say, because people do tell me to promote this and I never remember to, is I don't actually have it linked. Okay. Well, if you go into any of the descriptions of my videos, I actually have not put it in the description of this live because I'm an idiot. Or if you just go on the general links of my channel, then you'll find a Ko-fi or Ko-fi link, and that is where you can support me monthly to help cover the cost of the things I'm doing. And you also get access to a small supporter community, and we have monthly hangouts. We've got the next one a week today, and you get early access to videos. There's currently 2 videos open for early access if you're part of the supporter community that aren't out publicly yet. And yeah, we have a small community there where we share stuff and chat and all of this sort of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely worth joining, and you'll be helping me make the content and stuff that I do. So yes, but anyway, let's continue.
Do you see them very often?
No, it's been 15 years maybe.
So if your parents acknowledged that what they did was wrong, bringing you into the world, do you think that might bring you closer
that would
to
be
them again?
A big help to better conversation, of course. But if someone insists that what they did was right and they wouldn't change it, to me, forgiveness requires repentance of the action that's causing harm. That's just a fundamental definition to me. Otherwise, it doesn't really have any meaning. It's just a mental assent that they're going to mistreat you, and you've accepted that mistreatment. I don't really see how that's healthy at all. Pull the trigger gently and lower it. Gently
There's
lower
a live
it.
round in there, right?
Gently lower it.
Okay, but there is a live round in
Yes,
it?
lower it gently.
Okay.
Gently lower it.
How many times did he have to say gently lower it? Fucking hell.
There's something oddly sexual about cleaning the gun like this.
Is there? For you?
I mean, they're pretty phallic things to begin with in their own
I
way.
guess.
So.
I just never think of it like that.
As we sat at the dining room table cleaning the guns, the conversation turned to depression.
You know, I think depression is usually a result of a mismatch between your expectations and the reality of your situation. And that difference there is the depression. And I've experienced it, and a lot of people do. And I think maybe antinatalists are keen on that because they're compassionate, usually, or they wouldn't be driven to the understanding. And they're rational. And they see that the world really is not the way it could be, should be, or ever will be. So you live in a dysfunctional environment. And when you live in a dysfunctional environment, you put an animal in a cage, it's not the place it needs to be or should be, and you're stuck in a wage slave job. You have to sit in traffic. You're in a place that doesn't consider you anything more than just a cog. That's depressing as well, right? And when you realize that you needn't have gone through that, I think that can be depressing. So I think compassion is required. I think if you're not a compassionate person, I don't think antinatalism will make sense to you.
Have you ever felt suicidal?
I've seen there's times where I've felt like I really, really would have difficulty carrying on. Yeah, I would say yes.
Children in this
Probably
world,
so.
and we raise them to be warriors against evil.
Thank you so much, John H, for the super chat. First super chat of the stream, so top legend for that. John H says, "You're doing good work, Lawrence. I speak from the perspective of a septuagenarian," which is someone in their 70s. I hope I haven't just insulted John. Please carry on. I will be carrying on, John. There is a lot of stuff. If you want to watch my live stream with Tejas going over what's happened in 2024, lots has gone on. Although that's not focused on what I've done. That's just a roundup of antinatalism generally. But in terms of me, I have got a lot planned for 2025. We have my YouTube channel generally. So the YouTube channel will carry on as it has been. We'll be doing live streams, videos, all of this sort of stuff. More fundraisers. There's another conference coming, Antinatalist Advocacy Conference 2025. There is an update to the Antinatalist Handbook coming. And there's two other big things that I am at the start of working on, which I'm not revealing publicly yet. I'm hoping to get them all out, both out in 2025. But they are both a lot of work, so we've got to see. And there's potentially some cool stuff happening around this documentary that I will, probably not talk about in this stream, but, if it does happen, I'll be talking about it on the channel in due course. Yes, so lots more still to come, John, and thank you so much for the support and the super chat.
But I think that's not uncommon for just the general population. I think people should have the right to take their lives. I've had people in my family do that. Not immediate family, but close. And whether it was chronic pain that couldn't be relieved or just a really difficult situation. You didn't ask for this life, but you should be able to at least leave. But the problem is it doesn't always work. You might end up in a worse situation than you're in. You have to consider the people around you. How does it affect them? Once you're alive, once you exist, then you have all these other considerations. And the key thing about antinatalism, which I want to make so clear, is it's prevention. It prevents all these moral issues. It's that simple. Once you have that, whether it's abortion or sending grandma off on a raft in the icy...
Yeah, it's very true. Like, once you're here, there are so many ethical dilemmas and tricky situations that you've got to confront as an individual, but also as as the person who has created someone, but also you've put someone else into a situation where they've got to navigate all these tricky ethical situations. And if you don't create someone, you simply avoid those things. You don't have the nuance of abortion ethics or any of this sort of stuff.
See, those are all difficult decisions to make. You don't have to make any of those if you're just not here. So the prevention is the key. You can live the life you want, as long as you want, how you want, but just stop. Stop making it more. That's it. It's really just that simple. People make it so complicated, and they also don't want to bring their minds to it. That's what I don't understand.
Mom, I'm at the bus station in Hollywood, and this gentleman says he can make me a star, and if you could just wire me $250. Hello? Mom? Mom. Hi, welcome.
I was in Arizona. I had traveled 800 miles west from San Antonio to a small town of 5,000 people called Bisbee, near the Mexican border, to meet the comedian Doug Stanhope and his wife, the writer Amy Bingo Bingaman.
Who are these?
That's us.
That's you?
Oh, yeah. He gets me a wig, he takes the Bible, and we go for it. We sprayed his face to look oily.
I wanted to chat with Doug because of a rich vein of antinatalism running through his material.
The best thing I've done with my life is the abortion that I had. Quitting.
I actually did a video on Doug Stanhope's antinatalism in his comedy, and annoyingly, like, loads of the footage I used got fucking copyrighted, flagged as copyright. So I had to remove a bunch of it and either have audio or just link it in the description, which was really annoying. But it is what it is. Yeah, he has some pretty explicit antinatalism in his comedy, and he manages to make it very funny, even I think probably for the average person who isn't an antinatalist at all. Yeah.
School and having an abortion are the two things I look back and go, oh, you're fucking good work, Stanhope. And I say it's my
yes,
abortion, but it was my wife at the time. She had the abortion and I paid for it. It's not the kind of thing you try to go Dutch on.
Yeah.
No.
And there was no part of either of you that wanted to keep it?
No, that was the only thing we never fought over. Before and after we broke up, we fought about pretty much everything, but that we could always cheers.
Why?
Because we'd have to be fucking dealing with a kid right now, still. I mean, yeah, that kid would be, probably if he was in college, I'd have to pay for that. If he was a drug addict, I'd feel responsible. Whatever he did, it's my fault. And I've always thought that about my parents. How does anyone have the hubris to just have a child? I don't understand the 18-year-old cutoff, but no, you created.
There was something recently, in an upcoming video. There was a the New York Times has a newsletter called The Ethicist, and I've done a reaction video to one of the installments. And in it, this guy says, as far as I could tell, he was saying that it can be hubris to choose not to create someone because you think you know what the future holds. Which is crazy to me. If anything, it's the opposite. In my eyes, it's often people are not going to have a child because they think a possibility is that the future could be going downhill, or that it's likely. And they're not going to create someone because they don't want to risk that being an eventuality that their child experiences. To me, that's not hubris, that's humbleness. That's saying, one, I don't know what the future is going to be, although it could be bad. And two, I'm not going to claim that I'm such a god that I can create someone into a sensitive flesh suit that is capable of experiencing immense pain into a world that doesn't care about them, that could be going on a downhill trajectory. I'm not going to have the hubris that says, I'll create this person because I think I can control everything in the world and their life in such a way where they're definitely going to have a good life by the way that they didn't exist to need or want in the first place. I don't understand how not creating someone is the hubris thing to do. That seemed crazy to me, but more on that video when it comes out.
Me, without my consent, you should technically be responsible for me forever, and plan ahead for if you were to die. Well, what am I going to do? Work?
Doug and Bingo had an unusual start to their relationship. They met shortly after she'd been released from a psychiatric hospital, which informed her decision not to have kids.
Well, I knew early, but when I got diagnosed for the first time, it was like, that's...
But this is responsible. Like, some people will probably watch this and go like, "Oh, she has mental health issues. Okay, we can just, obviously that is why these people are how they are, and we can just disregard what they say, blah 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 blah." But it's like, no, this is someone being responsible. I mean, even if you don't have something that we classify as mental health as a mental health issue, you still shouldn't be reproducing. But it shows a level of self-awareness and responsibility if someone says, okay, I've got something that is labeled a mental health issue that I've identified as being something that is going to make me less capable of providing a child with a good life, or it has potential to be passed on to the child. This is just responsibility in action. This is just someone assessing themselves as a person and the capabilities they have and what they might pass on to a child, and saying, I'm not going to run that risk on the child's behalf. This to me just seems like responsible behavior. And yet some people use it as a means to disregard antinatalists. So I don't know what her, particular issues are. I think maybe they go over it in the documentary. I can't remember. But a very common one is dismissing antinatalists as depressed or stuff like this. It's used as a means of dismissing people. But it shouldn't be. That should be seen as responsible behavior.
Actually wrong for me to bring a child into this world. I can't guarantee all the time that I can take care of myself. I can't guarantee that I won't be locked up in an institution again.
Exactly. This is just responsible behavior. It's just being a realist. It's like, I am in this situation, and therefore I don't think it would be ethical. Like, perhaps she's the sort of person where she would think, like, if I were in different circumstances, like I were very rich, I could have everything at my disposal, I had very good mental health, everything was running in my direction, maybe she would go, well, maybe it would be okay for me to have a child. I don't know. But what she's demonstrating here is responsible behavior, even within the context of natalism, if you get what I mean.
Or several times. So that's just not fair or right.
What was that initial diagnosis that you got that first time?
Schizoaffective bipolar.
Okay. And do you think meeting Doug helped?
Those were brave questions to ask. I don't know if I would have asked those questions.
That wasn't meant to be a dig at you. I just meant in the sense of...
Like, it seems very personal. But,
No, it's just a really clumsy phrasing in a very comedy beneficial way.
Yeah. Truth be told, 1,000,000% yes. Yes. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, get on that
here's
side. Get on that
kids.
side. Get on Henry's side. And you know why we had those dogs? Because those dogs' parents fucked without their permission, like animals. That's what animals do. They just breed more animals, and that's what you do. Bury your animals, and then just leave a clean slate.
We were taking a break for a tour, and I asked if Doug would mind talking about his mother's experience at the end of her life.
Yeah, there's a joke, there's a bit that he does in one of his routines where I don't know if it's about his mother or his father, but he says he carries a picture of his mother or father when they were on their deathbed all fucked up, and he shows it to anyone anytime they say they're about to have a child, and he says, this is what you're creating. Obviously making the point that, well, one, you run the risk of creating someone who's going to have a horrible time, but two, when we create someone and say we're having a child, it's mired in euphemism. You're creating someone who is eventually going to die and go through all these later stages in life as well. But often we just think about the bouncing baby at the start. Yeah, I can't remember what bit that is on. I'm pretty sure I cover it in my video. Again, I can't remember if it's fully in there because of copyright, but yeah.
Although antinatalism is unlikely to catch on, it crosses over with other more widely discussed topics, including the right to die.
Right there, right where your cameraman is standing. Your cameraman is standing on my mother's grave. How dare you, right about here. And Bingo was laying right here on a couch. Do you know this story? My mother was, she was 63 at that point, and she was just medically just a problem. She had stents in her heart, she had COPD, she was barely breathed, she was hospice care, and a million other, you know, crushed discs, bad back, just a million issues. But there was the COPD that was killing her, and she'd always made it a point throughout our lives to let us know she would never be the person that's going to die with a lot of tubes coming in and out of her. She would point out morbidly obese people in the supermarket. Orthopedic was the code word. She goes, there's an orthopedic, line 4. And she goes, if I ever get that bad, kill me. And she did get that bad, so we did.
Fucking hell.
Even though it wasn't legal, Doug sought out a doctor who could outline what his mother needed to end her life. He had to wait until the statute of limitations had passed before he could talk about it.
I need some like black market advice on, like, she kill herself. She has hospice care, and that's what the doctor said. If she get hospice, then she should have morphine. Ma, do you have morphine? Yes. And he spelled out the amount that she needed to kill, or any human being would need to die. And yes, right in that room right there. I bar-backed while she slowly took pills and watched Bad Santa and tried to make a party of it.
Bad Santa, I've seen that film, not for a while, but I remember it being funny.
It was becoming clear that antinatalism intersects with issues many of us will have to confront sooner or later. We may have been brought into the world without a choice, but perhaps we should have the right to leave on our own terms. This wasn't the only wider issue, though. It also crosses over with environmentalism and reproductive rights, two issues which are very important to Les Knight, a key figure in the voluntary human extinction movement.
And an absolute gentleman.
Although Les has been campaigning for decades, he'd recently been the focus of a New York Times article, which drew the attention of Elon Musk.
And he was quoted on the front page of the New York Times as saying, there are 8 billion people in the world, but it would be better if there were none. And I'm like, well, buddy, you can start with yourself.
You know, Elon Musk just astounds me every day in the fact that, like, he is the richest man in the world. He's one of the most influential men in the world. And he just doesn't carry himself with the level of maturity, sensitivity, or, like, grace that you think someone in that position should. You know how, like, I'm sure everyone in every generation says this, but you know how people say, you know, like, the quality of politician we have nowadays is not what it used to be. You know, politicians don't carry themselves with grace. You know, these are not the people we would want in these positions of power. Like, Musk seems like that sort of person. You know, it's like he has power. Obviously, he's going to do certain good things with it, certain bad things. But it's just like his general, like, sensitivities and character and the way he carries himself just seems to be, like, really bad for the position he's in and the level of authority and power he has. But yeah, like, the lack of nuance in how he sees things is crazy.
Traveled north from the desert to Portland, Oregon to meet with Les.
Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Les was gracious enough to let us stay in his home.
Would you like to see your accommodation?
I would absolutely love to.
It's cool to get a peek inside all these people's homes.
Little nervous sleeping in the home of a man who wants us to go extinct.
It's actually pretty comfortable. I slept on it.
Yeah.
But having survived the night, we sat down in the garden the next morning. Les began by discussing the importance of reproductive rights.
It's like, do you think that every couple who doesn't want to procreate should have the wherewithal to not procreate? And they're going, well, duh, of course. Saying, well, they don't. Hundreds of millions do not have the wherewithal to not procreate. In fact, full reproductive freedom doesn't exist anywhere. Right now, there are 121 million unintended conceptions per year. But if 30 years ago, 50 years ago, all women on the planet had the reproductive freedom, had full choice of whether or not they procreated, I don't think we would be overpopulated to the extent that we are today.
For Les, the issue of reproductive rights is inseparable from the broader issue of climate change and our warming planet.
In fact, that's one of the main reasons that we need to have universal reproductive freedom. Everybody not born everywhere, but especially in those areas that are going to be hit the hardest, will die. They won't have to experience those horrible conditions and die in it. And also, the people who are already in existence will have a better chance of surviving if there aren't more of them. Like if a couple has 2 offspring to care for and migrate with, it'd be a lot easier than having 6.
It's such a difficult idea for people to get on board with. And you recently drew the ire of Elon Musk, is that right?
Yeah. He said if you start thinking that humans are bad, it's natural to conclude that we should die out. Yes, you got it. It's not that we're bad for the biosphere. We don't mean to be bad most of the time. We're just incompatible with other life on the planet.
Do you think that you need to be an environmentalist
to... Such a bizarre part of the interview. But yeah, no, just to quickly go back to this, like, it's just like, you know, I'm sure Musk does this to play up for the cameras and get clicks and get attention and all this sort of stuff. Like, he seems like someone who deep down just wants validation and attention from people, you know, which is why he's really trying to, or comes across to me as one of the reasons he's really trying to be the sort of figurehead for like this, you know, pronatalism and this sort of right-wing populism at the moment. Yeah, he just, I mean, I don't know exactly what I was going to say there. I kind of lost my train of thought. But like, one of the points I was going to make was he just seems to view things in such an unnuanced way, at least publicly on certain topics. And I don't know if this is intentional or not, but take this as an example. So the message that Les has put out is, humans are generally bad for the environment. And as a result, we should generally stop reproducing to peacefully fade out and hand the world back to nature. Now, I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm just saying this is Les's message. I don't share the same views as Les, but to get from that Les should have to be committed to killing himself makes such a tenuous link. Like, to go from I want to benefit the environment by reducing human activity to kill yourself, it's like a childish leap of logic to try and get like a gotcha for these people and basically just try and be vicious towards them. And I don't know, you just expect more from the guy who has the most money in the world and has so much power. You know, you think someone with that much power would take a bit more responsibility with how they carry themselves, what they say, given that, like, let's be honest, so many people have Elon Musk's dick so far down their throat. He should be aware of the fact that so many people are going to, you know, jump on every single thought he shits out. So, like, you need to have a bit of responsibility for how you approach things, how you word things, you know, the rhetoric you spread, this sort of stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if I got him.
What was that?
Mosquito.
Oh.
About to actually...
Maybe Les is right. We are incompatible with other life on the planet.
I hope we got that on camera.
I had traveled down to Canyon City, Colorado. where a Halloween decoration was making me question my mortality. And from there, things would only get more morbid. I'd been introduced to a filmmaker and illustrator who created a coloring book called The ABCs of Antinatalism. He goes by the name Life Sucks on YouTube, and I wanted to understand how he was deploying creativity to spread the message. His real name is Matt.
Hey, Matt. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Jack.
How you doing?
Good.
For someone who goes by the name Life Sucks, I was somewhat surprised by the choice of poster in Matt's office.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, he's a hero of mine. So I have a couple posters of him around the house. Yeah, I should have it on.
You know what? I'm being super ignorant, but I don't know who Mr. Rogers is. I've heard him referenced before, but I actually don't know who he is.
On the wall, but
did you watch the Tom Hanks?
Oh yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, that was a great movie.
We sat down to look at Matt's book. Given some of the ideas in it, I wasn't sure exactly who it was intended for.
I mean, a colouring in book, is this tongue-in-cheek, or is it really, have you given this to any kids to actually look at?
No, it's not.
It's quite dark.
It's not really meant for kids 3.
Yeah, I mean, does anyone actually think that it's meant for kids? Yeah, I've just seen Massilia. Also, Massilia, welcome to the chat. But I just saw Massilia commented about the t-shirt. Yeah, so one thing that isn't covered in this, which is why I was saying that, like, I feel like this documentary isn't really exploring the ideas as much as it's exploring antinatalists themselves. But the inclusion or involvement of animals in antinatalism isn't discussed much, and it kind of get hints. Matt in this interview hints at it. Obviously, he's wearing his t-shirt as well, but yeah.
3 to 5 or anything like that, but I would say teenage kids could definitely get some use out of it.
Which one stands out to you? Which are you proudest of?
You know, I really like the E for Ephilism because that was fun to draw because it's got a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a great white shark, and I wanted to feature that side of the philosophy. It doesn't get featured in published works very much, if at all.
Right. Mm-hmm. Do you want to read that
for
us, actually? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Ephilism, which is life spelled backwards, Ephil, is an antinatalist ethical framework devised by the American philosopher in Mendham. And basically, the difference between this and mainstream antinatalism is that it's anti-life. Anti-all life, anti-animal life. Plant life is not sentient, so that doesn't matter as much. But whereas antinatalism is, a lot of people just consider it a anti-birth, anti-human birth philosophy, and that's why he wanted to separate the philosophy from mainstream antinatalism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of anti-all life, I mean, how do you square that with having this adorable dog sitting here with you?
Well, he's adopted. So I had nothing to do with him coming into existence. He was living on the streets.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's probably that Jack, was asking the obvious questions for the audience and stuff. But it's like, why would... maybe you can't assume that people adopt, because I guess a lot of people do buy from breeders. But it's like, obviously caring for an animal is not in conflict with not wanting new beings to come into existence. I mean, if anything, if you want new beings not to come into existence because you care about their welfare, you're probably more likely to be a person that would want to look after living beings once they're here. Obviously, I can't say that for sure. I don't know if there's been any studies on that, but in fact, I'm pretty sure there hasn't. But I'm not surprised that, someone like Matt would be looking after an animal like this dog.
Getting scraps, wherever he could, trying to survive like we all are. And I took him into my home just to let him live out his life comfortably. Yeah, so we should give comfort to animals that are already here. And he's sterilized, so he can never reproduce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wanted to pick you up on a phrase.
Given Matt's artistic talent, we sat outside whilst he sketched a portrait of me in his unique style.
So you're now living in this idyllic part of Colorado, but you were in Michigan for a long time. Why did you make the move down here?
Big part of it was because my parents died and my brother. So there's a lot of memories back in Michigan, and I just wanted to Just start over, yeah. And then my partner at the time wanted to move as well.
This was one bit of the documentary. I mean, like I said, like anyone's going to want to do documentaries slightly differently. I didn't understand why this bit was included. They seem kind of like odd questions to have in a documentary about antinatalism that, you know, why did he move house? This seems completely unrelated. Like, if he gave an answer that was extremely relevant to antinatalism, then I would understand why it was left in, but it didn't seem particularly related. You know, maybe it's just like fleshing out antinatalists in him, rounding them out, making them look more human and not just like they talk about one thing. But at the same time, it's a documentary about antinatalism. So I didn't quite get... I remember there's a few more like personal questions with Matt. I didn't quite get why they were included, but, you know, they're in.
What did your parents think about your beliefs before you lost them?
They didn't understand them, especially the vegan thing, but my dad did say on his deathbed that he understood. He said, I get it now, it's inhumane. And it's just interesting how when people are finally have nothing to lose at all, they can come to the truth.
But did you have a good relationship with them?
I did, yeah. I loved my parents. I was really close to them, and I'm really lucky that I had such stable people, you know, and anyone who knew them misses them.
Because I think a lot of people would assume that antinatalists would resent their parents in some way, but it doesn't sound like you do.
Oh, I do. I didn't deserve to be in this shitty-ass world, and yeah, they wronged me by bringing me here, and then they left me. They abandoned me. That's something that a lot of parents don't seem to think about, is they're just going to abandon their kids. They're going to leave them, and they think, oh, I'm going to give them the skills to survive, but you never really get over the death of your parents, I don't think, so.
If it's not too personal to ask, you said that your partner you moved down here with, you're not with them anymore?
We're separated.
You're separated.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that your beliefs played a part in why you're no longer together?
I think so. Well, she said it was hard to live with a pessimist. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it probably did. Mm-hmm. Right. There you are.
Wow.
Very
I'm
cool.
not sure if that's one for Tinder, but that's darker than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, so that's kind of a play off of the cover of my coloring book, where
with the skeleton inside the stomach.
Yeah, so because whenever you have life, you have death.
Whenever you have life, you have death. Most antinatalists are keen to emphasize that the philosophy is about preventing new lives, not ending existing ones. And yet, they can be difficult subjects to separate.
Life is hard. It is. You know, it's really hard to get it right. It's really hard to be it's not easy to be a human being.
I was back in Chicago to catch up with Amanda. And as we were setting up, we found ourselves discussing depression.
You mentioned a minute ago that you'd lost a number of friends to suicide. Yeah. Do you mind expanding on that?
No. I mean, it's just unfortunately a big piece of kind of what this thing is, especially since the questions that antinatalism poses genuinely just leads to more questions about staying here. And I just think that that's a fact, and it's kind of an uncomfortable fact for a lot of antinatalists. But that is one of the reasons why I think there is such a big overlap between antinatalism, the right to die, pro-mortalism, and I have a lot of friends who have decided that they don't want to be here. There was a period of time I was basically losing one friend sort of every month.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's. I think it really is the toughest part of being in this community. Is, I love these people, and it's so.
And especially the right to die. world as well, you know, doing activism for that, because it will often be full with, obviously not just these people, but it will be often dominated by people who would like to access it. And, you know, it's like you can form bonds with people and campaign alongside people and have this connection with them, but you're advocating for something that is going to take them away, which doesn't mean it's wrong. It's still a good thing to advocate for, because, you know, this is what they've decided is in their best interests. But it's just, it's that negative, you know, like every cloud has a silver lining. It's like this cloud has a, whatever the opposite of silver lining is. So yeah, I can definitely understand how it's hard.
These are such rare specimens of humanity, and they're so good, you know what I mean? And they're so talented, and they're so brilliant. And as somebody that believes in the right to die, I do, like, I'm so happy that my friends are free, that they're no longer suffering, you know? They might not have got to live their lives the way that they would have preferred, which is to not exist at all, in the case of most of my friends, but they did get to live their deaths the way that they chose. And so I can't in any way regret their decision, but it is difficult not to have that piece of you that just is selfish, because now you're alone, you know, now those people don't exist, and now your friends are gone. And yeah, it's a difficult thing to contend with, for sure.
I was on my way home, having spent 2 weeks in the company of antinatalists. And for all the nuances in those I'd spoken to, there was still one more side to all of this I hadn't explored.
So there we've got us again at Speaker's Corner. One person I can name is this guy. Does anyone recognize him? That is John, who has regularly featured on the channel. Last video we did together was the one of us answering awkward questions for antinatalists. But John was with us on that day doing some outreach.
I was at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park. I was there to film with Danny, who I'd observed at the very start outside King's Cross.
There's no reason for you to reproduce. There isn't, and there's no reason for you either. What?
I wanted to talk with Danny because he represents an uncommon perspective within the antinatalist community.
Yes, so
You've
what?
got kids.
So what?
You've got kids and you're saying that.
How does your daughter feel about your anti-procreation?
What's that got to do with anything?
Danny is one of a handful of parents who discovered antinatalism after having children.
How does she know how she's going to be as a mum? She ain't got no idea. Until you're a mum, my dear, you haven't got a fucking clue. Is that your mum?
I wondered whether Danny's abrasive approach was doing more harm than good for his message.
Okay, now, I mean, for some people it may come off as this is very aggressive, but like often this is what people come to Speaker's Corner for. So people really like get involved in this.
Hi.
Hello. Hey, Danny. How you doing?
But his gentler side emerged when I arranged to meet him one-on-one at his home. His family didn't want to take part.
You are unique to the people I've spoken to so far in that you do have kids. You have 3 kids, is that right? Can I ask how old they are?
Sure, 26, 24 and 17.
So what did having children mean to you before you discovered antinatalism?
So I'm just going to think about that for a moment.
So I've actually done an interview with Danny on this specific topic about what it's like to have children and be an antinatalist, which is, I think, one of the first interviews I ever did. And he also waited for 30 seconds meditating before he answered each question. But if you want to go and find that interview, either just go into the conversations playlist on my channel or just click on oldest videos and then scroll through them. And it's one of the first conversations I have.
I mean, I didn't really think about it much. It was just something that I was brought up as something that I would do.
In this world, and we raise them to be warriors against evil.
Thank you so much for the donation and the support. I won't say who it's from because they didn't include it themselves, but you know who you are, and really appreciate it. It goes helping to cover all of the costs of doing this every, or the ongoing costs of doing this. Yeah, it's not just the YouTube channel, but the other stuff I'm doing behind the scenes. So very much appreciated. Thank you so much. And the person says, keep up the great work. I will keep up stuff, a lot more stuff to come in 2025. Yeah, stay tuned.
Just like having a job, getting married. So it's just something that I did. I did not think about what meaning it had or not.
One of the more common questions Danny gets is if he wishes he hadn't had children, but as you'd imagine, the answer isn't quite as simple as that.
You know, I regularly count my blessings, sometimes in writing. You know, I have a list of the things that I appreciate, and I think it's far more useful and productive to do that than to start wishing that things in my life were different in the past that I can't change. So I just don't think like that. But I think it would have been better had I never been born, and it would have been better had they never have been born. For many reasons, because if they'd never have been born, then they wouldn't have any problems. And if I'd never have been born, I wouldn't have any problems, and I wouldn't have caused anybody else any problems, which I have done over the years.
Do you ever worry that being so vocal about your beliefs in some ways is going to create this self-fulfilling prophecy where your kids are going to start looking for grievances or finding reasons to suffer in their own lives because they've heard you banging on about it so much?
Listen, I can't change who I am fundamentally, right? Personally, I don't want them to sit there in terrible depression and suffering. Of course I don't, and I try and do what I can to make sure they don't do that and make their lives enjoyable and make their lives, try and reduce any suffering that they do experience. And at the same time, I don't want them to be, I don't want them to be like living in cloud cuckoo land, because that could lead to them creating more problems.
Mm. Yeah, it's like, you kind of want to disabuse people of certain delusions they have, because it might lead them to...
We bring children in this world, and we raise
them
to be warriors against evil.
Thank you so much for the super chat from the Exploring Antinatalism podcast, Amanda. That is a very generous donation. I don't even know what to say. I'm kind of shocked. Fuck. Thank you so much, Amanda. I don't even know what to say. I mean, Amanda knows how much, I appreciate the help she has given me, all the work she's doing. Yeah, I'm kind of lost for words. But thank you so much, Amanda, for the support, both just now, but also that you've given me generally. And hopefully you know that I appreciate it, but also I want to verbalize it. Yeah. Fucking hell. But Amanda says, keep up the great work, Lawrence. Obviously, Amanda, I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. 2025 is going to be a bigger and better year. Yeah. And I did, just so people know, the Exploring Antinatalism podcast has episode 100 coming up very soon. I did actually see a link be posted whilst I was live streaming. I haven't been able to properly check it yet, but I did see it. But Amanda, are you able to confirm in the chat? I think episode 100 was just, if not posted, it was scheduled. So you've got that to look forward to. And it's also 20 years. It is 20 years, isn't it, from Matti Hairi's Risk paper. Okay, so Amanda says it's out now. So once we finish this, everyone go and head over to the Exploring Antinatalism channel, and you can you can get get the most recent episode there. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the donation, Amanda. Yeah, and the support. I'm a bit speechless. Yeah, no, amazing. All right, okay, I'm gonna stop being dazed.
Creating more people, creating more problems.
What do your kids think about it on the whole?
My oldest child is a daughter, she's 26, and then there's 2 boys. The boys are more into the idea, I think, but I think for her it's much harder because all her friends are, you know, getting married and having children, and, you know, so for her I think it's harder. We don't really talk about it very much anymore.
I mean, do you think that your daughter is going to have children at some point?
Who knows? I mean, it's definitely not out of the realms of possibility. Yeah, she definitely, you know, she hasn't said that that's not going to be the case. She's not an antinatalist herself. Yeah.
So what would you do if...
Yeah, it's a tricky one because it's like, you know, if you have kids, you want to support them in what they're doing, but then if they're choosing to do something that you're ethically against, it's a very it's a very tricky one. I don't know how I'd navigate it, so I have no advice to give, but there are other antinatalist parents out there, so maybe they can link up with each other and provide each other advice, because, you know, they're kind of in the same boat in that the children they have may go on to do things they disagree with, and how do you navigate that? It's a difficult one. I don't know if there is a correct answer. You know, different strokes for different folks in different situations. But yeah.
Your daughter brings home a baby from the hospital one day, and you're a grandpa.
I mean, I don't know how I'll feel.
I think obviously, you know, if you're in that situation, you're going to feel how you're going to feel. I don't think you necessarily need to feel guilty, though. What has happened has happened. You have tried to counsel your children. If they decide to have children, that's the decision they've made. You know, all you can do is just still love your children still, and love the grandchildren. You know, you don't loving the grandchild doesn't condone what has happened. You know, the grandchild is now here. You know, obviously it doesn't change how you feel. Our feelings are valid. But I don't think, if someone's an antinatalist parent and their child has a child, I just don't think it's useful in any way to beat yourself up about it. You know, what has happened has happened. That decision was presumably out of your control, or you had no significant control over it, because at some point your children become autonomous individuals. You know, and you just got to deal, like, just, you know, carry on with life, and that's the situation you're in. You know, obviously it's not perfect, but I don't know what else people can do.
It's difficult to know, but, you know, when I look at it now, just really, I'd be devastated by it, really devastated, I'd be devastated what she'd done to the child, and I'd be devastated about what it'd do to her, because, you know, I really do firmly think that makes perfect sense to me, that if you want to take care of a child, we need to take care of our own little children that are inside ourselves, that haven't been taken care of properly and have been traumatized by just by life itself, or by all sorts of horrible things that happen to people in life. So, you know, I don't think any of my children are in a position to take care of other children. They need to take care of themselves and their own journey. So if she did that, yeah, I would be really, really upset. I don't know what I would do, but my initial feeling would be, I don't really want to have anything to do with it. I don't have anything to do with it.
I had reached the end of my time immersing myself in the world of antinatalism. It's tempting to categorize the belief as a symptom of depression or trauma, and yet that also feels reductive. On the one hand, it's a cynical belief, marked by defeatism.
What antinatalism is about is trying to wake people up from what's basically propaganda we've been fed for our whole lives, that life is good.
And on the other, a case of compassion and empathy for the unborn, pushed to its very limits.
I don't want to wake the dead. Having children is like waking the dead, okay? And so I can only get myself to live a better day each day, not to force somebody else to go through the same cycle of failures and successes for absolutely no reason. Like, putting that on somebody else is just, I can't think of anything more cruel.
Whilst it can be an isolating ideology with heavy costs to personal relationships, the duty to spread the word also creates a paradoxical sense of purpose for many antinatalists. They may be shouting into the wind, but in doing so have forged bonds and fostered a community online, in their pursuit of a world free of suffering and free of people.
I don't necessarily think we're shouting into the wind. I mean, obviously we're fighting against the current, but, you know, shouting into the wind kind of implies that nothing is happening. But obviously antinatalists can have an impact and have an impact and will continue to. That doesn't mean we're going to be as impactful as any other specific, you know, group or movement or whatever. But I don't think we're necessarily shouting into the wind. I also don't know how Jack got that shot with no people in it. That's very impressive. So that's Trafalgar Square, which is one of the most central places in London, and it always is busy. He must have just been there very early and just been really lucky. Like, I bet there are people around him, but he just got lucky in them not being in the shot, because that's a very busy place in London. There we go. So that was I Wish You Were Never Born, the recent documentary about antinatalism or antinatalists. What did people think? I will create a poll in the chat. Let's see what people thought of the doc. Okay, I've just put a poll in the chat, so hopefully you can see that poll. Have a vote on that poll and let me know what you thought of the documentary. And if you thought it was not so good, if that's what you're voting for, put in the chat, what was it about it that made you feel that way? Like, did you feel like there was big misrepresentation? Is there something that you would do radically differently? You know, what made you vote like this? Okay. Louis says, this was enjoyable watching this film a second time with your commentary and the engagement in the chat. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Louis. Charlatan says it was okay, it wasn't great, but also not bad. Eduardo says too much drama, just don't have any more kids, that's all. Darkness says react to pronatalist Gotis. I'm not sure if that's a person or what, but you can always email me, Darkness, and send me links to things. Let's see. Did anyone else? All right, I'm going to close the poll, but please still share your thoughts. So the results are in. 82% said that it was great, and 17% said that it was not so good, with 23 votes. Charlatan says a lot of the interviewers' comments were not reflected, in my opinion. Wait, I don't quite understand. A lot of the interviewers' comments were not reflected, in my opinion. I don't quite understand what you mean there, Charlatan. Do you mean that the comments made by Jack, that he was making about the interviews, were not reflective of what? I'm not quite getting it. Darkness, my email is in the description of every video or live I do. You can get it from there, but I'll put it in the chat as well there. No worries, Charlatan. Cool. Massilia says sentiocentric antinatalism was not really mentioned or talked about. I agree with, I think, that it was more an exploration of antinatalists, I think, than antinatalism. Charlatan says that they were saying the interviewer made some comments that he didn't think through.
In this world, and we raised them to be warriors against evil.
We have another super chat at the last minute. Thank you so much, Asagi. I have no idea how much that is, but the support is really appreciated. Thank you so much, Asagi. Asagi says it was a decent documentary and a great stream. It was great to have you for the stream, Asagi. And I hope you enjoyed the shout outs for your work during the stream with Tejas the other night, because you've been doing a lot of good stuff in Japan. If people don't know, there is Antinatalism Japan, which is a group in Japan, of all places, that does stuff around antinatalism. They do demos and other stuff. So go check their website out. But thank you so much for the support, Asagi. Right, well, that was everything. So, I thought it was an enjoyable documentary. It's getting a decent amount of views, over 40k views. I'm hoping it will be 50k some point soon. I just look forward to future documentaries coming. And there may be some more stuff happening around this documentary, but I don't want to. Nothing's confirmed yet, and I don't want to share it on here before it's confirmed. But hopefully there will be some more stuff happening around this documentary. We'll have to see. But thank you everyone for joining, watching it and engaging in the chat. The chat has been very active. It's been great to see. Sorry, I was just checking the chat. But thank you everyone for joining. Thank you so much for the support from the people who did support, especially Amanda with the really generous donation. Thank you so much. One thing I will mention whilst people are here is if people do want to support, and obviously I'm just going to give you this piece of information, and I should have done this at the start, but I'm just going to give you this piece of information. You do with it what you will. When people make donations, if they do it through PayPal or Ko-fi, or the Ko-fi link, then I get the vast majority of it. Only a small cut is taken. If you do a super chat, YouTube takes about 30% of it, something like that. A much bigger cut is taken by YouTube. So if you want more of the money to come to support me, then do it via the Streamlabs link or the Ko-fi link or PayPal or whatever. Or if you want to transfer it some other way, you can email me. But doing it via super chat on YouTube, YouTube does take a bigger cut. So I just want to let people know, I appreciate any support people send in, but I just want to let you know so that you might not want a big chunk of your money just to get taken by YouTube. But thank you so much for everyone who supported on this stream and who does whenever. I think that is everything. So the next stream I'm going to do, so obviously there's videos coming up. I've got, videos scheduled for, 2 more videos scheduled at least. And then I've got more that I'm working on. The next live stream I'm going to be doing will be sometime next week. And it's going to be on, there was a video done looking into pronatalism in the conservative side of politics. It's probably going to be quite America-centric, but I thought that would be interesting to watch. So that's going to be the next live stream that happens, and I've got a good thumbnail for it. Yeah. And Louis says YouTube super chat may encourage more donations. Louis, you're correct. And I'm not telling people to not use super chat. I just want to give people that information in case they don't have it, so that they can make the decision themselves. I still encourage people, if they want to give super chats, please do. I just wanted to let people know. But thank you so much for everyone who supported in this live stream and in general. Cool. And next live stream will be soon. I'm going to schedule it probably later today for when it's going to be. And I think that's everything. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for watching the documentary with me. And I will catch everyone in the next one.